All right. Welcome to 2022 and the Dr. Jimbo Love Show featuring Seth Matthew. We're glad to be back, and we're sorry we missed the last couple weeks. I've been sick as a dog and was unable to do anything. So we missed a lot of games. We apologize to you guys. Let's get right into it. We're going to start talking about our national championship game between Alabama and Georgia, played Monday night. First game, again, we knew during the SEC championship, Alabama pretty much killed Georgia. Georgia just did not have a good game. The quarterback for UGA just had Stetson Bennett had an off game, and the first game ended up 41-24, Bama, a 17-point victory. Now, interestingly, Vegas, who seems to know more than anybody should know, actually has Georgia favored, okay, in this game. Seth, anything you want to add initially here to this?
Yeah, I mean, so Georgia played perfect all season, and when they got to Alabama, they choked. It's Alabama at the end of the day. They're always in the championship. Do you have a problem with? Do you think there should be a problem with how many college football teams there are, and they have to play again?
Oh, you mean the fact that there's two high-profile games from the same program?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, but the way it played out all year, these two teams seem to be hovering in the top four. They never dropped out of the top four, either of them, or did they? Did Alabama drop out for
Bama,
maybe a week?
I think, did with that weird poll, but when they brought back the actual poll, like week 8, Alabama was back in the top 4.
The problem I have with this whole scenario is that Alabama, for the last 9 years, has had the number 1 recruiting class in the nation. How can a team and a program, and now how many different teams do we have in Division I? Remember we talked about this yesterday?
Yeah, there are 130 teams. Yep, 130.
So there's 130 teams in Division I-A football. And how can Alabama, okay, and the fluidity of their staff, because they lose their coaches a lot, how can Saban every year consistently be the number 1 recruiting class?
You know, it's kind of like Bill Belichick, though. When Nick Saban shows up, he literally probably has the kids come in. He has probably all the championships laid out and says, "Do you want one of these? I can make it happen."
Right.
And he always comes through. Now, the thing that's different about this game, so Stetson Bennett, that had the off game for Georgia, he's actually a walk-on. So that's an interesting fact about him. He's fought his whole way. It probably got to him a little. I mean, he grew up watching Georgia. He's always wanted to play for them since the first grade. There was a great story about him on ESPN. And he knows it's been over 40 years since the Bulldogs have won a championship.
Wow.
Which is crazy because Georgia's always high-ranked. They're always thought of as one of the best, but they haven't won a championship in 40 years. So that's a really long time. And
that was a lot. There were a lot of good teams that Georgia had under Mark Richt. Okay, remember, they won 11 games consistently for numbers of years, and they never could get over the hump of actually winning a national championship.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Georgia's going to come in here and put up a better fight than they did the first time. Now, on the downside of them playing before, Nick Saban, he made adjustments, probably watching film, all that, so he had Georgia's number. Well, Georgia got to see them in person, so now it's up to their coach to make these adjustments. Now, you have Bryce Young at quarterback who won the Heisman.
Right.
And the thing I love about Bryce Young is he's a freshman, which means he could be the second person all time to win the Heisman more than once. We've had a lot of people close. Trevor Lawrence was up there every year that he was there, but he never got it the second time. The only person to do it was Archie Griffin in the 1970s.
1974-75 season, I know him well.
Yeah, and so, I mean, right now, I think Georgia's defense, I think they're going to come through. I think they've been amazing all year. The only blip on their radar is the Alabama game. Right. And so this is going to be probably, I think, in my personal opinion, that this has potential to be one of the best college football championships of probably in the history of college football. It's going to be crazy.
I really hope you're right, because the biggest thing that I hate is in a big game, one team comes in and lays an egg. Now, think about this. It's incredibly hard to beat a good team once, okay? It's even harder to do it twice. And I think maybe that's some of the reflection you see in Vegas. How will each team switch it up on offense and defense? You know Saban's going to do something completely different to throw off Kirby Smart and Georgia.
Well, and what I'm interested in is we're in the bowl game. There's nothing left for the seniors, and this is your last game of the season with these group of guys that you just battled with all season. Alabama has something to lose here because they're known as the best. They brag about being the best all the time. Georgia hasn't won it in 40 years. I wouldn't be surprised to see the conventional Georgia pull a lot of trick plays and just some crazy fun stuff to watch on TV.
Absolutely. Now, remember this too. This is a little caveat, is that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are great friends. Not only do they work on the same staff together, but they are buddies, and Kirby Smart absolutely loves Nick Saban like a father. So this has got a little bit of, that little, caveat to the whole story, which is kind of cool. So a couple keys that they said here, look for UGA to pressure Bryce Young, move him off his spot. Do you realize that last game, UGA did not have one single sack of Bryce Young?
Which is crazy because they
Is that
average
nuts or
like
what?
4 or 5 a game.
Exactly. So my prediction is going to be that UGA wins. I think it's going to be a nail biter, but I'm going for UGA. Of course, I'm a South Carolina fan, so I'm going to go with my SEC East division. But boy, wouldn't I love to see Georgia pull this off, especially after what Seth said, 40 years in the making.
Yeah, I'm giving it to Georgia too. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a battle. I could see that the score go back and forth all game, and then the fourth quarter we're maybe separated by a field goal. But I really give it to Georgia here.
So basically, whoever has the ball last.
Yep. It's
Good.
going to be awesome.
So tune in. The game begins, I believe it's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so it's 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Monday evening. You can watch it here at Brothers Bar and Grill, which is where we're at right now. Seth is the general manager, and this place is just absolutely wonderful. We're up in the mezzanine section right now. It's an upper level. You can do private parties here. The other thing is that, again, this is the best comfort food probably in any, Northfield area, Stapleton area, maybe in the whole northern part of the city. Mm-hmm. What else do we have going on? Anything else you have going on right now?
Well, it started today. The Western Stock Show is in town. It's been gone for a year. Wyoming and Oklahoma have been trying to steal it for quite a while now, but it's still here. More and more.
Oklahoma too.
Yeah, Oklahoma's been trying to take it. Denver hasn't done itself any favors. They've made it more difficult to get to the Western area with all the construction. But the stock show has made it. Cowboys are coming in. There's going to be rodeos, all that. A lot of the people stay up here in the hotel. So I don't know if anyone's a big fan of the stock show, but if you want to meet any of these people, they'll be here because they come here since they're stuck in the hotels here for about 3 weeks. But it's basically a trade show, and they have a bunch of fun events. So if you get a chance, go stop on down and then come back to Brothers and have a beer.
That's right. And remember, don't take your Christmas lights down until after the stock show. That's a Denver tradition. Mm-hmm. It's been over 100 years. In fact, when electricity was just being invented. All right, so let's go and talk a little bit about some college hockey. And Seth is our resident expert on college hockey. I know a little bit about Cornell hockey. My friend Scott Howard is an unpaid assistant coach and has been with them for 19 seasons. One of the first things that we talked about is that there's 130 D1 football schools as opposed to in hockey, there's only 60 teams.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about that?
So I think you just get more talent. You don't have these beat-up games. You could be playing the 50th team ranked. They have to play 2 days in a row. They always play Friday, Saturday usually, especially when it's conference play. They do 2 at that place, and then later in the season, they'll do 2 away. The interesting thing is if you're close enough, like the Minnesota Gophers and St. Cloud State, they'll split that. They're not in the same conference anymore. They used to be, but they do 1-1. They'll go play at St. Cloud State, then they'll drive down to Minneapolis because it's only an hour away and play a game there. So that's an interesting split. But since the realignment of the divisions, because St. Cloud State, like I said, was with Minnesota, but obviously the Big Ten now is a thing, and they have one of the most dominant divisions in the NCHC with DU, Duluth, and St. Cloud State.
Interesting. That is really hockey central, isn't it?
Yeah, and North Dakota's in there too. I can't believe I forgot them. But you look at those champions, minus last year, St. Cloud State was in the championship, but we went almost 3 years in a row with DU and Duluth, who are in the same conference, meeting in the championship. So I guess it's not unheard of to have people from the same conference in the national title game,
right,
like Georgia and...
right. Well, the problem, again, to go back to the football thing, is just that you've got the SEC, okay? The SEC is just getting better and better. Well, we have Oklahoma and Texas that are going to be joining.
Yep.
I mean, we're talking a super conference. So it's really almost unfair to other conferences like the ACC. And even though the Big Ten is always going to be a very strong football conference. But what about the Mountain West? How many people are going to bail from the Mountain West and try to get maybe into the Pac-10, Pac-12? Who knows? The one thing that my friend from Cornell said about hockey is that he felt that the teams that are able to fly into these tournaments have a distinct advantage to people that are riding the buses. And, well, to be honest, with you on that, it's an advantage to fly in and everything, but it also it's just as confusing. So, we'll have to wait and see what Seth has to say about this. That's okay. So, Seth, what are your feelings? Do you think, and as a former athlete, do you think that flying into a game for a tournament is going to make it easier for you? Are you going to feel like your legs are better, mentally you're better, than opposed to riding a bus for 4, 5, 6 hours?
Oh, 100%. We've all been on long car rides. I mean, I live in Colorado now, but when I go see family, I've taken the drive to Minnesota, and I literally had to almost sleep like 13 hours just to feel better after that. Where when I fly home, it's an hour-and-a-half flight instead of a 13, 14-hour drive, and you don't get as warped from the drive, so
I agree.
or from flying. So I mean, I think that it is an advantage to fly places. Obviously, that you'll see that for teams that take the bus. I bet they have a worse away record than they do home record because they don't have to take that long bus ride. And teams that fly, I bet that they're a little bit more competitive when they're playing on the road.
Yep. Now, a lot of these teams, what they've tried to do is they try to leave a day early. Now, when I was playing basketball back in the 80s, that's what we did for tournaments. We would leave on a Thursday, and we would, we'd get there Thursday night. We'd do a walkthrough, and then Friday, the day of the game, we'd do another walkthrough, and we would rest all day. Now, that wasn't great because you lull yourself into almost a mode of, at least I did, where I was in a hotel all day long, and that's tough. And college kids were running around wild in the hotels, trying to go and see the campuses and stuff like that. Sometimes it was better just to get off the bus, get in the locker room, and get out and just play the game.
Yeah.
What were your feelings on that one? Do you have any when you were playing?
Yes, I like just getting there and going right for it. Because you think about that, you take that long ride, you're still thinking about your game, but when you have that time off and you're sitting in a hotel room, you kind of lose like the intensity. You could lose a little focus. Where if you just go there and you just like, you know what, let's do this warm up, let's go. I've been thinking about this all day. You're in the mentality of, hey, we're going to win this game. Where you don't have that kind of intensity when you have a little time off to sit around and do nothing.
Exactly. Now the feature game that Seth we're talking about is St. Cloud State versus our hometown Denver University.
Yeah.
What are your feelings on this game?
Yeah, St. Cloud State's coming into town. They were in the national championship, like I said, last year. The crazy thing is they got whooped in the national championship, but they lost their best player of the game before due to a broken leg, but he's back now. I just checked the St. Cloud State roster. They are mostly juniors and seniors. They do have this young kid named Mietnin, VT Mietnin, that's a sophomore, and he is amazing.
What country is he from?
I believe Finland.
Wow.
But
Forsberg's country.
Yeah, and so Pete Forsberg.
Pete, I'm sorry.
But no, they're looking
close.
good. They're playing DU, who's a little bit younger. DU is known to play produce NHL athletes, a little bit more than St. Cloud State. Logan O'Connor, who played for DU just about a year ago, has been lighting it up for the Colorado Avalanche. He's been a huge help. But when I looked at the polls, I mean, St. Cloud State in one poll was sitting at number 4, and then in another they were at 7. DU and the other one was sitting at 2, and then sitting at 7 in a different poll as well. So they're both in the top 10.
How accurate do you think those polls are?
Well, so it's hard when you play these two teams. So DU just choked about a week ago. They were playing Anchorage, Alaska. They should have beat them both games, but they won and they tied.
Right.
It's like we said, when you play 2 times, it's a little bit tougher. Sweeps are amazing, but usually you would think when you're playing these top-tier teams that you're probably going to split. St. Cloud State, when Mankato was number 1 at the beginning of the year, they split. Then they took on U of M, who was in the top 5. They split, and then they started sweeping teams, so they got back up there. Even St. Cloud State has been swept 1 time this year against Western Michigan.
Gotcha. So it all comes down to the end of the season, to the Frozen Four. Tell our audience a little bit about how do you make the Frozen Four?
So when you get into the the tournament starts out huge. It starts out with.
So it's, how many teams are in the tournament? 32?
No, only because there's only 60 teams. So I believe they allow in. How would it work? It works 16 teams.
Okay.
But it's really hard to get in because you do allow. It's kind of like any other sport where the conference champion gets an automatic bid. So if you lose your tournament. Now the crazy thing about the conference that St. Cloud State's in. They have only won it twice compared to Denver's 3 times. Denver's were more recent. But St. Cloud State has been in 7 of the 9 NCHC championships to go to the national tournament. And that tournament is so fun to watch because if you are a college hockey fan and you're watching your one team, you typically play teams in your division or around. But when you get to the big tournament, the Ivy League schools come into play, the Eastern schools like Boston, Massachusetts, people you haven't seen play all year, Colgate, and the gameplay is completely different. It's weird to see what style wins.
Interesting, and right now Cornell hockey is on a massive road trip, and this is something that Cornell hockey has done every single year, is they take a road trip during the semester break, and they go out west, or they go to Florida, or they go someplace out of the Northeast to be able to play against these teams. They were just playing in
North Dakota,
the Fighting Sioux, right? And that facility is unbelievable. It looks almost as big as the Pepsi Center. It's just an amazing facility. Now, they're out there playing, and they're playing a couple of different teams, mainly so that they get a flavor for what kind of hockey the Midwest plays. And it gives them a better chance when they get into the playoffs.
Well, and the Midwest is the best place to go if you want to get good experience and tested for the national tournament. If you look at the top 10, there's really only 6 teams in Minnesota. Maybe out of the 60, I think it's 6 or 7 in Minnesota. The top 5, 4 out of the 5 at the beginning of the year were all in Minnesota.
Wow, that's really something. Well, I mean, that is where kids. When you grew up, now first of all, Seth, you went to St. Cloud State.
Yeah, I went to St. Cloud State. When we grew up, when I was growing up in St. Cloud, my neighbor built an ice rink. I was skating every night until 3 in the morning.
Even with lights?
Yeah, they built lights out there.
Wow.
And he even had a little speed thing so I could track how fast my shot was.
Wow.
And you just see people play pond hockey, skate. That's why they kind of got inspiration because Hockey Day Minnesota started featuring high school games, and they did all these outdoor games on lakes, and they basically built an arena on a lake. And all of a sudden, the NHL saw how much attention it was getting. Now the NHL does an outdoor game every year and features it. It was just in Minnesota, coldest game in NHL history, 3rd coldest ever in history for any sport. It was so cold in Minnesota, they had to start warming up the ice because it was too cold.
That's amazing. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, when you are skating, the way that your skates actually work is the pressure of your skate forms a really, really thin layer of water. And if it's too cold to form that layer of water, you can't skate.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
And it's so wild that how many hockey games have you ever heard? Hey, we got to heat up the ice, guys.
We got to heat the ice in order to be able to play. All right, so let's talk. We missed so many games because of my sickness. But let's talk about 3 different games that were bowl games that I thought were outstanding. First of all was South Carolina versus North Carolina. And me as a South Carolina fan, I just can't tell you how impressed I was with South Carolina's running game, with their play selection. And you got to remember, Beamer is a first-year coach. And South Carolina was lucky enough to beat Auburn and Florida this year in the same year, which is almost unheard of for South Carolina. And then for them to come out and beat a Mac Brown team, North Carolina team, as handily as they did, 38-21, it just brought joy to my heart.
Yeah, so this is a huge win for South Carolina. Right now, like you said, they already have a good running game. Their defense has been good. But the quarterback play has been inconsistent all year, and you just didn't really know. On the bright side of this, they had a winning season. They won their bowl game. Spencer Rather is transferring out of Oklahoma, and he's going to improve their quarterback play next year. Now, I think the addition of Spencer Rather, I know he looked a little shaky this year, but so did everybody else in the college football. I think that he goes to South Carolina, and he puts them back to relevancy, and they're competing to take that top of the division, or they're going to be up there. That's just a huge upgrade at quarterback on an already decent team. I believe he's going to be the missing piece for them.
And there's the tight end, too. What was the tight end's name? Do you remember his name? But it doesn't matter. But he's a stud who's coming over from OU. Now, understand something. If there's a conference out there, SEC, the SEC West is probably the toughest. Okay, the SEC East is a very, very close second. So even with all these improvements, and I mean, you still have to face Georgia every year. You got to face Florida. You've got to face Tennessee. Okay, Kentucky. So there, I'm optimist. I'm very optimistic, but we still have a huge hurdle to get over to beat Georgia.
Well, here's a fun fact: what division won, like the SEC, Big Ten, all of them? Who won the most bowl games this year?
I think it was the Big Ten, right?
It was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Which is cool. Now, that's wonderful and everything, but really when it comes down to it, who cares how many they win? It's really all who makes the playoffs.
That's true.
And not to take anything away from the Big Ten, but really the money is where is in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, the second game is Seth is Minnesota versus West Virginia. Minnesota ended up winning 23-13. What were your impressions of the Minnesota game?
I think Minnesota overperformed and topped the season off with the overperformance of the year. They lost their starting quarterback or running back, which are a heavily running team, first game of the season. Then they lose their second running back, third game of the season, and they ended up with a 10-win season. I think that hats off to PJ Fleck. Honestly, as soon as our starting running back went down, I thought the season was over.
Yep.
But they hung in there. They were in contention to go to the Big Ten championship all the way up until the end. And you know what? The bright side of it, that starting running back who's supposed to be on Mel Kiper's big board, number 6 running back in all college football, has decided that his name is Mohamed Ibrahim, and he is coming back next year. So I'm going to say that Minnesota is going to contend to go back to that Big Ten championship. After that, it might be a rebuild, but you know what? They're going to have one more year of trying to make a run at it. I mean, but Wisconsin at the end of this year, they were pushing hard. So I think it's going to be a battle, but maybe it could happen.
Well, that's a lot of optimism for you. I mean, you're in a similar situation. That's a program just kind of like South Carolina is, we're lovable losers.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to end a season on such a positive note for both of our
At the
squads.
beginning of our program, when we had our very first show, I believe we talked about Minnesota. I said a 500 record would have been like the most joyous thing, but to have almost like a 700, 750 win percentage on the year.
They won 10 games?
Yeah, it was 10 and 4.
Anytime you win 9+ games, that's a huge, huge season in college. Because you remember, they were only playing 12 games.
Yeah.
So it's maybe 13 if you're lucky
with the bowl game.
With the bowl game.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about Seth's real favorite team, OU versus Oregon. The game, again, Oklahoma just dominated Oregon 47-32.
Mm-hmm.
What were your feelings about OU?
This is arguably the best performance Oklahoma had all year. They actually played to their potential. And I'm not going to take shots at Lincoln Riley and say it's his fault, but it might have been. But Bob Stoops comes in, got him ramped up, and they competed with
out of retirement.
Yeah, out of retirement to come help out. And I think a lot of it played his son's on the team, so he came out of retirement just to really coach him, who got a touchdown in the game.
Good for him.
Yeah, and they came out and they played all phases of the ball. They looked amazing. Remember, Oregon was ranked number 1 at one point this year. Which is,
and they beat Ohio State early on. Remember that.
And so, I mean, there's a new coach coming into town. He's a defensive-minded coach, so OU fans are excited, but there was a blemish on the win for Oklahoma. Caleb Williams, after winning the game, he's our freshman that replaces Spencer Rather, who's now at South Carolina, has decided to enter the transfer portal. And he's going to sit there and weigh his options. He said he may come back to Oklahoma. Now, on the flip side, the UCF quarterback that has been really good has decided he's transferring to Oklahoma.
Ooh.
And there is a 5-star recruit still coming to Oklahoma that should be there, I believe, next year.
Who's the leading candidate for your offensive coordinator, or have you guys named an offensive coordinator yet?
I don't know who would be.
Because that's going to make a huge difference.
I think they're going to leave it up to him. I think they're going to leave it up to the new coach and have him bring his people in.
But I think that has to be a huge factor in what kind of offense they're going to run, right? Because, as a quarterback, maybe that's what your freshman quarterback is doing right now. It's kind of reassessing, saying, well, if we're going to have a guy come in and it's going to be a run quarterback, a run offense, I don't want to play there.
Yeah. And I don't think the new coach is going to change too much. He did coach at Oklahoma at one point, and they kicked him out.
Okay.
It was, he did all right, but he underperformed. I believe he lost a bowl game. I don't remember what bowl game it was, but when he was the assistant, because he was actually under Bob Stoops at one point, and then he left to go to Clemson after that bowl game basically destroying of OU, and Bob Stoops brought in, I believe he brought in his brother for a bit.
Did he?
To replace him, and I think it was more of a family thing rather than underperformance. But
well, who can you trust more than your family?
Exactly.
Right?
So we brought him back.
Very good. All right. Anything else about the college football bowl games?
Not much. It's just really interesting seeing where everybody's going. This is the most transition I've ever seen in college football. Players hopping schools. I mean, I've never seen the transfer portal used this much before.
No, and that's a good subject for maybe next week, where we will talk in detail about what the transfer portal has done to college football. Some feelings. I mean, if you listen to ESPN or any of these analysts talking, there's a lot of people that are very pro transfer portal, and there's a lot of people that are not. Now, I personally, I like the transfer portal, and I like it for one reason. I like it because if you're a quarterback, or if you're a running back, and if you're a skilled position player, and because maybe your position coach and you don't get along, or maybe you're not going to play, this gives you an option to get out of Dodge. Now, the bad part about it is that there's a secondary whole recruiting thing that's going on. There's a lot of money that's being exchanged on the backside. Have you heard about this at all?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we'll talk more about this next week. Let's just leave it at that. But basically, there's a whole secondary recruiting battle that goes on, because what you've got is you've got people that are watching and looking for people that are either not playing. These are people that were 4- and 5-star recruits, and then they're going in and they're preying upon them. Now, is that fair to someone who's building a program? Well, it's again haves versus the have-nots. So, and then, look at Wyoming. Wyoming lost their quarterback, their running back, both quarterbacks left in the transfer portal. Now, is that fair to the Wyoming fan? Well, you got to look at it to the kid. Does the kid want to stay in Wyoming where he's going to hand the ball off 2 out of 4 downs, or does he want to go somewhere else where he can throw the ball?
Yeah.
Right? Anyways, we'll talk more about this next week. All right, let's shift our focus to the pro games that are happening. We've got some very, very important playoff scenarios going on. Let's start with Pittsburgh versus Baltimore. Pittsburgh's 8-7-1. The Ravens are 8-8. This, and according to Seth, he thinks this is going to be Ben Roethlisberger's last game. I, myself, hope and pray it isn't, but we've got an interesting situation. We've got Lamar Jackson, who is out. Tyler Huntley is going to be playing quarterback.
For the fifth time this year.
Fifth time.
Yeah.
So, remember the Steelers won the last time these two teams played, 20-19. But again, Harbaugh went for 2. He could have easily kicked an extra point, and they could have gone to overtime. So that, you can put that out, put it out and just say, well, who knows what would have happened. One thing that I want to focus on is that Pittsburgh is 31st in the NFL defending the run. So if Pittsburgh can't defend the run, I don't care who the quarterback is, it's going to not be good for Pittsburgh's defense. What have you got in this game?
Yeah, so Tyler Huntley is really proven capable. I mean, it took him a little bit to get the rust off. He was sitting there for basically most of the season, but he's played basically 5 games straight now because Lamar Jackson just can't get healthy. But Tyler Huntley reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson. He may not be as quick, but he is mobile, and he throws for over 200 yards a game in almost every game except for one. I think he threw 197. So he's a very capable quarterback. I mean, the feel-good story would be Big Ben wins and he gets to keep playing. I just don't see it. I believe they're already out one of their top receivers this game, and the only person that can save Big Ben's season is Najee Harris.
Yes.
And so it's going to be close. Whenever you get these rivalry games, especially in the NFL, and it gets crunch time, going to the playoffs, these games could go either way. It'll be interesting to see what team comes out.
Yep.
But I do think that Tyler Huntley and the Baltimore Ravens pull this one out, and they go to the playoffs, and Lamar Jackson comes off it in playoffs and destroys some unsuspecting teams.
Well, I don't see it that way, Seth. I really don't. And the reason why simply is because there's going to be so much emotion. Ben is going to be playing with an incredible emotion. Now, Najee Harris, he just broke the Steeler rookie record for amount of yards rushing. Now, granted, Franco Harris in 1972 only played 14 games. Yes, there was only 14 games in the season back then. But Najee also has gone the longest without a fumble.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to knock on wood right
yeah,
now.
Why would you say that?
I know, because I'm knocking on wood, and I feel good. But, so anyway, Steph and I are going to do a little side bet on this game because we definitely need some skin in the game. I want to see if he can back it up. We also have Easton, who's here, and Easton is going to be a huge Ravens fan. So we'll see what happens. So come on down to Jackson.
Brothers Bar and Grill.
Come on down to Brothers Bar and Grill, and we won't see Lamar Jackson, but definitely come in. There's going to be some really interesting games, which brings us to the point that the Ravens are a 3.5 point favorite. Again, they're playing in Baltimore, so really the 3.5 points.
It's a half point.
Makes it, because it's a 3-point thing anyway. All right, the second game I want to talk a little bit about is the Chargers at 9-7 versus the Raiders at 9-7. The winner clinches the 3rd playoff spot in the AFC. What have you got for this game?
So the Chargers have been up and down all season, but on the flip side, the Raiders have been up and now they're just down. They've had some crazy things to overcome. You had the John Gruden scandal, you had the tragedy with Henry Ruggs, but the Chargers haven't had any of that. The Chargers had the potential to be an explosive team. If people remember right, at the beginning of the season, the Chargers were the number 1 in this division before the Chiefs got their stuff together and they thrived up. I give this one to the Chargers. I just think that they're younger, they're better. They don't have as much drama. I could see them coming out and blowing out the Raiders by more than 2 scores. They look just amazing. Austin Eckler having a heck of a season. I really didn't know a running back that would be his size and be as effective as he is.
So you're going with Herbert?
Yeah, Herbert. I'm on the Herbert train. So.
All right, good, because he rode the Herbert train a little earlier. And
yeah, it did not go well.
And it went off the freaking rails.
My Bo Nix. We're going to talk about me after college football.
Yes, and for those of you who don't remember, Bo Nix is the quarterback for Auburn, who is hot and cold. You never knew what you were going to get.
Every time I picked him, he lost. Every time I went against him, he would destroy. So.
Yep. locally speaking, we've got a game that was moved from Sunday to Saturday, which is the Chiefs at 11-5 versus the Broncos. Broncos are out of the playoffs. They're playing for pride. But the Chiefs have a chance, if they win, to be the number 1 seed and have home court and home field advantage for the entire playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
They
think?
have to win, and they need the other team to lose, because I believe they're behind. Is it Green Bay they're behind? I believe it is. But it looks like this is going to be Vic Fangio's last game.
It is.
And
I think it's time. Maybe he's had 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, he hasn't done anything with it. Chiefs are fighting for the overall seed. Broncos are starting Drew Lock. That's not a good sign, because it's been over 2 years of seeing Drew Lock. We waited to see if we had him. He got beat out by Teddy Bridgewater, who actually finished the season with a 500 record and had his best statistical career year.
And he's injured because of a head injury,
Yep,
correct?
because he got a concussion.
Yep.
And you look at the way they played last. Patrick Mahomes didn't have a good game, and they still crushed the Broncos.
Right.
So I think this one, Mahomes has a good game, and the Broncos lose by even more. It's unfortunate to say.
Yep.
The Broncos right now are just going to sit here, get a draft pick. They're going to wait and try to find if they can get Aaron Rodgers or
Russell Wilson.
Or Russell Wilson. And I mean, Deshaun Watson's still out there. No one talks about him, but he's still there.
If he doesn't go to jail,
He
right?
hasn't been convicted of anything. It's been a year. So at some point,
22 women, which is, it's a little interesting. Remember, you're innocent until proven guilty, but that's a lot of women.
But these 22 women magically appeared after he told the Houston Texans he didn't want to play for them anymore, and the next door neighbor of the owner is the prosecuting attorney.
What?
So this is going to be, there has some red flags on this whole
Oh
thing.
my God.
So it'll be interesting. And they went up to as high as 60 to 100, and then when Deshaun Watson, his lawyer, asked, hey, I just need to know who's accusing me,
right?
Everyone dropped off.
Oh, no kidding.
So
I didn't realize
there's still a couple women left, but it's not as bad as it initially sounded. Now, it's still terrible regardless, if it comes out to be true.
Absolutely.
But the number has fluctuated. It went from 30 to 60 to almost 80 women to now we're back to the 20s and under. So this has been a little
there's a little, and let's stress this enough, that you are innocent in this country until proven guilty. So I don't care how horrible accusations are against you. I am a firm believer that the justice system must play it out. So that's good. That's new news to me, actually.
Yeah.
So I like that. All right. So let's move into college basketball. And briefly, rankings in college basketball are kind of irrelevant, probably until you get to the championship weeks of late February. Okay, remember there's 68 teams that make the NCAA tournament. Okay, 64 teams, of course, and then there's 4 that are playing games. Right now, ranked is Baylor is 14-0 at number 1. You've got Duke, Purdue, Gonzaga, UCLA, Kansas, USC. Now, that's number 7 is USC. That's your last undefeated team. It's ranked number 7. And I'll tell you why in just a second. Arizona, Auburn, and then Michigan State. All of them have either no losses or at maximum 2 losses. Mm-hmm. All right? But the team that I want to feature, and which is really wonderful, is right up the road from us, and it's Colorado State, which is 11-0. Okay? 11-0. They're ranked 20th. Now just think, the only other team that's undefeated is number 7, University of Southern California, USC. So we got a team that's pretty cool, right up the I-25.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about
CSU?
CSU.
So CSU's having a great season.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them only being a 1-loss team this year or being undefeated altogether. But this isn't college football. This isn't anything like it's not comparable. So they may finish in the top 20, but when it comes to the brackets at the end of the year, they're probably at best, even if they were to go undefeated, looking at a 5 seed.
Isn't that
maybe? And when I say 5 seed, that doesn't mean they're 5th. because it goes 1 through 16 4 times.
Right.
So that
right,
would mean
right,
they're
right.
technically sitting in the
The
20.
20. Right where they're ranked now.
And so, I mean, they had a couple of tough games coming up, but they got canceled due to COVID and things like that.
Right.
So now those games are just, I believe, just gone. So
yeah, they're not trying
to make them up, which is beneficial and hurting because they have a pretty cake schedule the rest of the way.
Right.
That was the difficult part of their season. So I could see them almost running this out. It will all come down to when they get to your conference tournament. Anything can happen, and that's an automatic bid to the tournament if you win your conference championship.
Right.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be hopeful for Colorado State. It'll be interesting. Hopefully they get a fair seeding when it comes down to it. Because, I mean,
but that shows you how weak the Mountain West is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're telling me that you think that they can run the table, okay, and go undefeated, and the Mountain West to still only be a 5th seed.
It's also because they're not unheard of, but they're not a big name.
Right.
Where you look at Duke. The ACC has nobody ranked in the top 25 besides Duke.
Which is amazing.
But if they were to lose 2 or 3 games, Duke's still going to be a number 2 seed.
Sure.
Whatever, because they're Duke at the end of the day. This is Coach K's last year. They're going to value Duke and give them. I think the committee is going to give them a little bit easier of a road this year.
Right.
And just because it's a feel-good story, I can already see the headlines and that's months away, but I could see that roll out.
Yep. Interesting. Well, we were going to feature the Michigan State versus Michigan game, and unfortunately COVID protocols have canceled that game, so we're not going to waste any time. Michigan State is 13-2. Michigan is 7-6,
and they've lost to Minnesota.
So Kansas. The next game is Kansas number 6 versus number 25 Texas Tech. Kansas's only loss is to Dayton. Okay.
What?
Dayton, Ohio,
Okay.
the Flyers, and that happened right after Thanksgiving on 11/26. Since then, they've won 8 straight. Texas Tech is recovering from a loss to Iowa State. They lost 51-47. Now, a team that's ranked 25 that only scores 47 points, you ask why? Well, they only had 7 players eligible. So they were missing some of their starters, and you got 7 guys playing. That messed up everything.
7 is the minimum you can play with. If it goes to 6, they just cancel your game.
Do they really?
Yes, because they won't let you play with 1 sub. There's
Okay.
injury risks. There's things of too many minutes that they won't let that go.
Interesting. What are your feelings on Kansas versus Texas Tech?
So Kansas has always been a dominant team since I can remember. They're kind of up there with the Dukes and things like that. But these schools like Texas Tech, I'll even throw Oklahoma State, they're these teams that have their guys for a while. We talked about it a couple weeks ago with Alabama, how they were older than Gonzaga. I believe they're the team that beat Gonzaga, as long as it's the same with Duke. So when you get these seniors and juniors, it makes your team better.
Yes, it does.
The one and done, you'll get a flash in the pan, but they're always due for a letdown. With that said, the way Kansas is playing, I think they have Texas Tech's number. But it should be a close one. I think Texas Tech is going to hold in there, and I bet you in the last 10 minutes, that's when Kansas pulls away and probably wins by 10 or 12.
Exactly. And that happens a lot in college basketball. You're going to watch the haves and the have-nots, and when it comes down, that last 10 minutes is really where the rubber meets the road. So another game we want to feature is, again, Colorado State versus San Diego State. The Rams clobbered Air Force last game, and they have a leading scorer, and the guy's name is David Roddy for CSU. CSU is averaging 81.9 points per game. That's 22nd in the nation, which is pretty good. That's a very potent offense. What have you got on this game at all?
Yeah, so San Diego State, it is a hurdle, but I think Colorado State has the players and the talent to overtake San Diego State. San Diego State's had a couple of up years, but honestly, Colorado State has been playing perfect. I don't know if it's a new coach. I don't know if it's facility. Well, I don't know if he's a new coach, but I don't know if it's the coaching or if it's just this is a group of guys.
Steve Fisher's the coach. Remember, he used to be the coach that he was a coach for Michigan and he won a national championship with them back in 1989. So Fisher, is an old Grizzly veteran coach, but do they have enough to beat?
I think they do. I think San Diego State, I think it's going to be a close one.
And they're playing in San Diego State.
Yeah, and so, but these are the wins that Colorado State needs to get. They can't afford to lose. If they were to lose this game, you probably won't see them in the top 25 the rest of the year.
Yep.
But if they win this game, whenever they pick for seeding, this is what's going to get them up to that 5-4 range, is they talk about quality wins.
Right. Tennessee, number 18, is 10-3, and they're playing against number 21, LSU. Now, 21 LSU is 13-1. The Vols beat Ole Miss 66-60 in an overtime win on Wednesday, and LSU beat Kentucky, a traditional powerhouse in the SEC, 65-60 on Tuesday. What are your feelings on this game?
So I'm taking LSU. What I love about LSU and teams like Alabama, they're big and they just dominate the paint. And Tennessee, I actually did get to see that Tennessee Ole Miss game. It was a good game. They were back and forth. I honestly thought Tennessee was going to blow it, but they pulled it off. But LSU, I just like these bigger teams. I mean, you can lose to a 3-point team, but this is basically strength on strength here. I mean, Tennessee does have a good point guard, but I say LSU gets the edge here because I like bigger teams because it's more consistent to win down low than it is to shoot from the point all the time.
I agree. I agree. And I think that really you're going to see this is going to be the best matchup of college basketball for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get a chance to watch this game, definitely check it out. I believe it starts at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, 2 o'clock Mountain Standard Time here. Our last game we want to feature is number 11, Iowa State versus Cephas Oklahoma University, who is 11-3. Iowa State beat Texas Tech, and OU is coming off a loss to Baylor, who's, remember, undefeated and is number 1 in the country. What are your feelings on this?
So, Iowa State is ranked. Oklahoma, is it in Oklahoma?
It is in Texas Tech.
Iowa
it's in
State.
Lubbock. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It is in OU.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No, Oklahoma has been a lot better through the years. Last year, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were battling it out for the top spot of the division. So now you bring in an Iowa State that's ranked a little higher, only has 1 loss, but Oklahoma lost to Baylor. Write that off. They're the number 1 team.
Right.
So with it being in Oklahoma, and me being a fan of Oklahoma, I'm giving the edge to Oklahoma.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, Seth. You're allowed to do that. We want to thank you for tuning in today. Again, we're here at Brothers Bar and Grill. It's in Northfield. The shop's at Northfield. Come on up and check us out. It's kind of quiet here right now, but the Broncos game starts at 2:30, so we expect a pretty big crowd.
Yeah.
Any kind of specials today that drink specials or appetizer specials or anything that you got going on, other than the fact that everything is great here. You've seen me sipping here back and forth. This is a little bit of grandfather's cough medicine because of my throat. But there is just absolutely the most incredible comfort food here. Go ahead, Seth. What do you got going on?
Yeah, so we got some beer specials. I believe right now it's $4.50 for a tall Busch Latte.
Busch Latte?
No, Busch Light. But it's called Busch Latte. And we have some shot specials. I mean, Vegas Bonds are on special. I believe they're $5 a shot, which that's everyone's favorite. If you don't know what it is, it's a little bit of whiskey, some peach, a little bit of Red Bull to keep you awake, and a splash of cranberry for color. And those sell like hotcakes around here. Especially, they're a great shot to keep you going. If you're going to watch the Broncos game and drink through the whole thing, might as well take some of that to get that energy back up.
Very good, very good. Well, you also, too, we want to, if you have any of your family members that are seniors, okay, if they have Medicaid or Medicare and a PPO, they're eligible for a free pair of orthotic/diabetic shoes, and that's with Pro Comfort Medical. So feel free to reach out to me at 303-519-5579. Get your grandmother, get your aunt, your uncle some shoes. It's a program that's in place to help pain reduction. It's also there to help that no more knee replacements, no more hip replacements. And finally, Medicaid and the federal government is giving money to reduce pain and to help alleviate people's problems going forward. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. We'll be talking again about the transfer portal, and we'll be talking also about some other the playoff games for the NFL. We'll talk some college hockey, and of course, we'll go on and talk again about college basketball. So thank you very much for tuning in. Anything else that you would want to add, Seth?
No, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys. Take care.